I've heard news that the mayor or whatever, somebody in Winnipeg has set a limit of 5 p.m. for the protest that was going on downtown by the ledge. So from what I understood is most of the protest had vacated a while ago when the province announced that they would be eliminating the mask mandates and vaccine mandates in the middle of March. And voluntarily, just a lot of people packed up and they felt it was a mission success. And so that's interesting to see what's happened. Now, apparently there was a group of people that decided they would stay till all of Canada has its regular freedoms back, freedom of movement and association and being able to go places and hang out with the people you want to hang out with. A lot of people may not realize in the States that, like, for example, despite getting the vaccines, you still couldn't have a family Christmas, right? Like, you could be all vaccinated and there was a limit as to how many people were allowed in your house. And it was kind of like a bait and switch, because it was like, well, you know, once you get this vaccine, we're going to get rid of all the masks and all of this, and you're going to be 100% safe and you can't get COVID. And then Christmas time came and then there was more lockdowns, more COVID than ever before. And you can look it up. Like, I'm not just making that up. It just got worse and worse and worse, which is like totally bizarre. And and then you weren't allowed to associate with the people you wanted to, even at the holidays, and you should be allowed to assemble and associate. And, you know, these are freedoms that are self-evident in a democracy. Like when you read the Canadian Charter of Freedoms or whatever it's called, which I actually, until now, I never really had my whole life. That charter is a recognition of Queen Elizabeth recognizing that we have these rights and freedoms. It's not Queen Elizabeth granting us rights and freedoms. It's her flat out saying, oh, here comes the... All right. And so it's her recognizing that we have these rights and freedoms from God, actually. That's how, you know, the preamble words it. So yeah, it was bizarre these last 2 years here, and it was a lot more strict than the United States. So that's kind of why there's a lot more pushback, I feel like. You know, you look at other places in the world, they never had it as strict as Canada. Some places are a little more strict, like Australia. But, you know, it's we'll see what's going on downtown. And I'm gonna flip this camera around here so we can see where we're going.
That's it! Back to Winnipeg!
Here I am, downtown. I don't actually see any remnants of the protest. It's only maybe 5:15. Apparently the police and everything were going to shut it down at 5 o'clock here in downtown Winnipeg. But there's no sign of anything here. But I'm going to walk up there now that I'm parked here and actually take a peek and see what's going on. You know, one thing maybe that I should do here is I kind of did this the first time I came here. I had heard rumors that the protesters were yelling at people that wear masks, and honestly it's like -40 out, so I'm kind of happy to wear the masks anyways, because it stops my face from freezing. Well, let's go see what there is to see, if anything. So this here is where the protest was. You can see the street signs are still up blocking. the road there. There's still a police car here. The protest area is all cleaned up. Looks like there's a bobcat just kind of cleaning up some of the mess. And yeah, it's not a disaster area. I was actually just talking to a police officer, and they said things were peaceful. There was a little bit of noise in the early days, but then that most of the protesters had kind of listened to them. They had set certain timelines when they were allowed to honk and not, and that the protesters were respectful of that. It would seem like the protest is just a handful of people over there. There is folks here from the news media, and I guess they're kind of recording the end of it. I would guesstimate maybe there's about a dozen protesters left. And yeah. There's one gentleman there, I think he's maybe a counter-protester. I'm curious to see what he has to say. So I just asked you what the Bye Felicia means, and
Bye Felicia is basically like a trope. It started in the movie Friday, where people that have overstayed their welcome, you say Bye Felicia, they need to go.
So by overstaying the welcome, you're referring to the honking?
A 3-week occupation is a little long.
Okay, right on. Thank you very much. A little bit of what's left of some of the protesters here in Winnipeg.
It'll get bigger again, you watch.
Yeah.
It's just retooling.
And as you had mentioned, the camp's kind of moving over there.
Yep.
And anyways, I hope you all stay warm. Well, I think it's time to go home. There's a couple flags here hanging. A Canada flag and a Métis flag. And without freedom, there is no hope, and I suppose that's true. So here's a website, mbfree.ca. And time to go back to the vehicle. My conclusion for this evening is that pretty much there is still a handful of protesters out there. They're moving their camp over so that it's not blocking the road. And I guess they're still holding the line, as the phrase is, used by the various freedom convoys. And yeah, like, honestly, it's pretty uneventful here in Winnipeg. There is a lot of people honking as they drive by, but the protesters themselves aren't honking. And what was very comical is, so I had spoken to a counter-protester with the Bye Felicia sign, and then there was another gentleman next to him, but he declined to be on camera. He kind of went off about how he didn't want facial recognition and being spied on and all this kind of stuff. He had a comical sign, that's why I wanted him on there. It said Trump ass Manitoba. So he's obviously not a fan of Trump, and the whole time he was kind of shouting about consumerism and all these things, which are also issues as well. So I wish I would have gotten that, but you know what, it's fine. Then I had spoken to the protesters, and there's a small handful, but they were relatively friendly. And yeah, so just watching this whole thing unfold is quite interesting. I did get to speak to the police as well. However, just out of respect, I didn't want to film them. And what they had talked about, I asked them some questions like, how was everything going and that. And they said, like, pretty good. They were always in dialogue with the protesters, and the protesters seemed to listen to what they asked for. So if the police said you got to honk less, they set a timetable when the honking was okay for the last couple weeks, and so on and so forth. And for them, the biggest thing was the protesters were blocking the road. And as long as they're not blocking the road, I guess it's okay. I got a sense from the officer that I spoke to that he wasn't really in favor of the protest personally. But in all truthfulness, I would say he did a very good job of being neutral and presenting a neutral perspective on the situation. And Again, I could have read that totally wrong. Maybe he's for the protest, but you know, he just you know, straight up down to business kind of guy. And that's all for this evening, and I appreciate you tuning into this channel. And you know, going forward, this isn't the only issue as I wanted to cover. There's actually a whole host of things I wanted to discuss. However, since this is the issue du jour and it's actually something local within a drive from my house that I could go to and look at, it has been something that I'm using to kick off this channel. So thank you very much for watching.